Welcome to the Hamblin Vision in Conversation. In this second of our two-part video presentation in our Practical Spirituality series, we continue to look at the role of counselling and talking therapies in our spiritual lives. Today I'm joined by Jackie O'Neill, the Hamblin Vision's resident counsellor, who offers a low-cost counselling service to our members and supporters via Zoom and in person. Jackie talks to me about how her work in counselling psychotherapy began, why she feels called to make her work accessible through our low-cost scheme, and how her approach of accompanying and journeying alongside a client can help to navigate the oftentimes uncertain and overwhelming path through challenge and change. Hello, welcome. Hello, Jackie. Thanks for joining me.
Hello.
And hello and welcome to you viewers if you are watching this on our YouTube channel. My name is Mike Jenkins from the Hamblin Vision, and I'm joined today by the Hamblin Vision's resident counsellor, Jackie O'Neill. Jackie's joining us to talk about the relationship with counselling and spiritual practice. And we're really keen for this conversation to be part of what we're thinking might be a two-part video presentation where we're exploring the value of counselling and psychotherapy. So something that I've noticed in my own life, and certainly in going to spiritual retreats and being around people who are exploring spiritual practices, is that oftentimes there's this attitude in spiritual practice that you just need to transcend all of your, messy human stuff and surrender it over to God or a higher power or the universe. Just be in the present moment, and actually, then everything will be okay. And so these conversations are forming part of really of our one of our key aims at the Hamblin Vision of looking at practical spirituality. How did you get into counselling and psychotherapy? Where did it all begin for you as a practitioner?
It wasn't really choice to start with, but I've worked for the NHS 25 years. But the role that I carried out for almost half of my working life within the NHS was actually as it was termed customer relations officer, but in actual fact it was helping people who had some problems or concerns with the service that they had received at the hospital. Right. And I think I'd been doing that role about 2 days probably when I thought to myself, I think I'm going to need a few more communication skills or even counselling skills within this role. Right. I was very fortunate in that the local college was actually running a BACP, that's the British Association of Counselling and Psychotherapy. They were running a course, beginners like starting up course. And I went along to that and did, I think it was 18 weeks. It was very helpful, and I took that into my role. And that was all good. And then somehow or other, thinking that was enough, somehow or another it wasn't enough. I didn't actually need anything else for within the role that I was doing. I started, I went on to do some more training, and it grew from there really. I'm a counsellor within the NHS, right? Where I worked for, I think, 6 years there as a counsellor. And then I switched over and worked in a university setting as a counsellor there.
Fantastic. It sounds to me like immediately, like you were saying, it was after a couple of days, you knew straight away that role required you to really listen, to really be there. There was clearly a readiness within you, like there was this therapist, this counsellor ready, to kind of emerge.
I think because, people that cross the threshold of a hospital, or indeed any, if they have to go into any sort of medical situation, however strong a person they may feel themselves to be outside of that boundary, as soon as they cross that threshold, you're quite vulnerable. You feel vulnerable because you're not really in control of what's happening, or you're reliant on other people to help you, aren't you? And
Yeah,
I think being seen, being heard, being valued is really important, you know.
I agree, and I think it's a huge, in my experience, a huge part of the healing power of counselling. You know,
Mm,
that there's somebody to witness what you're experiencing, somebody to and to be there with you, accompaniment, you know, the kind
yeah.
of they're walking with you. You're not alone with it. I think that's really healing in itself.
Oh, that's really interesting, because when I talk about my counselling practice, this, when I first meet somebody,
Mm,
that's part of my explanation, is that I just see counselling as walking alongside you
mm.
while you work out whatever it is that's brought you to counselling, and then feel
Mm.
able to go on your own. And that's how I describe it. Yeah.
What do you practice a particular type of counselling? So for anyone who's perhaps not been to a counselling session before, or maybe thinking that they might need that support, is there a specific type of counselling that you practice?
Yeah, I trained as a humanistic counsellor. The umbrella humanistic is it covers a range of therapies, really.
Mm.
But it was, one of the founders was a chap called Carl Rogers,
Oh, right.
who was very much into what person-centered
Yeah.
um, therapy. And that was about being seen. A client needed to be seen and heard and valued, and be able to express themselves in a non-judgmental environment. She felt was a really powerful way to bring about whatever change it was that they wanted.
Mm.
It was much more, it was set up in sort of opposition to the more medical forms of counselling at that time, with a positive client-led approach.
Actually, even though we might feel at certain times in our life scrambled or, split in different directions, confused, overwhelmed, unable to cope, all those things that might lead us, whatever those experiences are, the details, that actually somewhere deep within us, we know what we need. I think you mentioned that Jackie and I were chatting before, talking about that, weren't we? That somehow we often know what we need, but it's got lost in the fog of whatever we're struggling with.
Sure, it definitely does, because that is, at the core, that is the approach, the humanistic view, is that actually we know what's best for ourselves,
Mm.
really. But, you know, life happens, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, we get into difficult, painful, sometimes really traumatic experiences,
Mm.
and we can't, you know, it blocks us. We can't sort of think, well, creativity gets completely lost. And we just, sometimes it just needs somebody with a, to be able to maybe hold up a mirror, and
Yes.
just listening to what you're saying, sort of repeating it back, maybe sometimes reflecting, to help us work our way through that maze and find our own response, our own
Yeah.
response to whatever the problem is. Yeah.
And that's empowering, isn't it? That when you reconnect with that part of yourself, um, and and I think that it's no surprise that we need others to help us do that. That no man is an island and all that kind of approach. That it's okay for us to need help to actually at different times in our lives, and that's why I think that lots of different therapies, but particularly counseling and talking therapies, they really do have a place in our spiritual practice, our spiritual lives. But I feel sure that before the development of psychology, before the days of Freud and Jung, and before these became really more mainstream traditions, that in different faiths there were spiritual counselors. There were people who would advise either the congregation or other people in that faith community, that there was an element of accompaniment, but being able to talk about the details of our lives and the things that we're struggling with, to a friendly listening ear, to a companion who can guide us. Now, tell us about the low cost clinic, because for those of you who don't know, Jackie has an association with us here at the Hamblin Vision. And you offer a low-cost counselling clinic, don't you, via our page? You know that we
Yes, I do. I do, because I'm really pleased to be able to offer a low cost sort of option, because I just like to think that counselling can be available to everyone really. And sometimes it's really hard to get, difficult it is sometimes to get appointments on the NHS. It's just really expensive. And in these times, you know, we're all a bit financially
Mm.
pushed at times, and so, you know, it's good to be able to offer something that's hopefully affordable and within
Yeah,
reach.
I
Yeah.
agree. I think it's vital. In fact, a couple of years ago, I did contact my GP for to be referred for some counselling for a specific issue that I wanted to look at. And even at that stage, you know, this was, I think it might have even been just before COVID. Um,
Mm.
they said there's really very little option. You're going to be waiting a long time. And they did recommend some local counsellors, some private counselling practices that had an option for you know, a low cost option or a sliding scale, you know, to make it more accessible. So I think that's really well, and we're very grateful that we can offer that to our membership and to our subscribers. I think
Mm.
it's very,
Mm.
very important.
Well, I did some training at the beginning of COVID on telephone and online counselling. So I've got a range of options now that I can offer telephone, I can offer Zoom, and also face to face. I still got a room I like to use at the Green Door Centre. It's a green space, and connection with nature can be really powerful as well in the healing.
So much, yeah.
Mm.
I completely agree. And of course, it's there's a train station nearby, isn't there, Bosom? And didn't you also say that you also have a space in Chichester that you
Yes,
can
yes, I have a room in Chichester that I access as well, and I use that as well as so I've got the two centres that I can work from to make it accessible, really, as I say. But I Zoom, we use Zoom or telephone.
Mm.
Um, the counselling is as short or long term as the client needs, really. Um,
So that's a good point actually. So if anyone's watching this and thinking, I've you know, I think I might try some counselling, you know, maybe for people who've not had any counselling before, how does it work in practical terms for your own practice?
in practical terms, I always have, it's my usual practice to offer a free 20 to 30-minute chat
Great.
via Zoom or telephone to
Mm.
talk about the way I practice and to hear what's brought the person to counselling. And in
Mm.
that way, we can decide if we're a good fit for the counselling, if
Mm.
I've got the skills that they could use, you know, to help
Mm.
them, or you know, if they, you know, if we get on, because the therapeutic relationship is such an important part of the actual counselling. If it's outside of my skill set, then I would need to say to them, perhaps try another avenue or whatever it might be.
Yeah, because there are some life situations that you know, talking therapy, psychotherapy isn't suitable for, right? You know,
And there are different modalities to counselling as well. So it
Mm.
might be that cognitive behavior therapy, which would be much more scientific approach perhaps to counselling
Yeah.
than I offer. And if I think that that would be more appropriate, then I would say that, you know.
Yes. Yes. Yeah,
Um,
that's great because in a way, signposting somebody to something that's perhaps suited to their needs. You know, so in the interview I did with another counsellor, Gillian Woodford, she was off saying that oftentimes um, clients can come back with the same issues because they're really only engaging with it sort of intellectually, like kind of analyzing it. So they understand their problems very well, or they understand the things they want to change, but change isn't happening because they're sort of only really engaging with it like on the level of the head.
yeah, I think that happens sometimes. And we, you know, part of what I try to do is perhaps look back at things that have happened to us, our experiences, because sometimes those patterns we bring into the here and now, but
Mm.
we don't. I try not to stare at them. We try not to stare at them too much.
Yes, I get that.
But we look at the patterns and we look at things, and to help maybe change the patterns, because then we can try moving forward, and hopefully those things won't come back to bite us again, which they do sometimes.
Yeah, but that's a part of it, isn't it? Bringing things up into conscious awareness so that we can see them and know that, well, that's not me. It's something that's happening. It might be a behavior, it might be a thought pattern, it might be a habit, it might be a self-image, a negative self-image, a false self-image, but to actually see it sort of objectively and realize, well, that's something that my mind does or that I have a conditioned response to, but it isn't me. It's something that's happening in me. Can in itself be very healing. But I'm really interested in what you say about the therapeutic relationship and that being with that sort of listening, because my sense of talking to you is that actually it's your warmth of generous spirit. That actually that container that is provided by you as the therapist. That sort of open acceptance. In a way, all of the qualities that certainly Henry Hamlin would have ascribed to spirit or to Christ consciousness, which are this sort of vast open arms of a capacity that is there to allow things to come and to go, a sort of unconditional love, really, which isn't, like romantic human love, but is this sort of clear, unshakable space of holding. And
Mm.
I get that sense that maybe that's something that's very, very crucial in the therapeutic relationship for both therapist and patient.
Yeah, I think it is really important. During my training, I had as part of the training, you have to have counselling.
Yes.
Um, and actually that was a really interesting experience, and it gave me a deep and empathetic understanding of what it feels like to go for counselling for the
Mm,
first time, and
mm,
um, how nerve-wracking that can be, and how hard it is to reach out.
mm,
Um, and and I think it is that kind of hold. I look on it as a holding space, that
mm.
anything can be discussed. It's all confidential. I mean, within boundaries, obviously. If I felt someone was going to hurt themselves or somebody else, then obviously we have to do something.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Um, but within those boundaries, what they talk about, anybody brings, is confidential, and we look at things from different perspectives.
Mm,
Um, and it is a deep holding experience, really. I think, and
mm.
it's important for the success of the counselling in the long run.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I completely agree. Jackie, it's been so nice to talk to you about this this morning. And if anybody is thinking about beginning some counselling, um, please get in touch. You can reach Jackie certainly through our website. On the homepage at the bottom, there's a little link that goes to Jackie's contact details. And have you got is there an email if people want to write to you, or that's on the site?
They can find me on the BACP counselling list or on counselling directory, and that'll have my contact. They can contact me via those directories directly, so that's
Perfect.
fine.
And that's
Yeah.
the British Association of Counselling.
British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy,
Yeah, yeah,
or the counselling directory websites. If they put my name in, it'll come up. Yeah.
fantastic. That's great.
Um,
Well, thank you so
oh,
much for joining and talking to me. It's been really nice to learn more
thank.
about your practice. And yeah, we I hope to meet you in person at perhaps at an event or sometime soon.
Yeah, that would be lovely, wouldn't it? So we don't get to meet each other in person really now, do we? We're on the Zoom.
But it's nice to know that if people, are able to meet in person, they can meet you at the Green Door Centre in Bosham or Space in Chichester.
Yeah.
So there are options there. So thank you, Jackie. It's Jackie
Oh.
O'Neill. Anybody watching, if you would like to reach out and speak to Jackie and talk about counselling and psychotherapy, then do get in touch. As she was saying, the first 20 minutes or so is a free consultation. And specifically, if you are struggling, like a lot of us are, with the cost of living and financial pressures, then Jackie is the person for you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you.